Okay, let's get going, everybody. If you can grab their chairs. We are ready to roll. Welcome to Tuesday night. Let's give God a hand for getting us here safe and sound tonight. We want to roll respectfully and as timely as possible, so we're going to open up in prayer as always. So take a deep breath and prepare for the opening prayer.
Dear Jesus, thank you for this beautiful day and this opportunity to gather together to learn more about you. I just pray that you open our hearts and minds to the teaching you have for us through Pastor Jeff. And I pray for the still suffering addict that they find their way to freedom. In Jesus' name, amen.
Give him a hand. All right, welcome. We're grateful that you're here tonight. We're grateful that you're in the sanctuary in our presence. And we are also grateful that we have people watching us throughout the world on live stream. Live stream is an option for those of you that don't know that you could actually share this meeting with somebody that's not here tonight by going to our Serenity Village Community Church Facebook page. You can do that right now on your phone. Hit the share button, send it to somebody, and they can watch the entire meeting live. And we would love to take this opportunity to welcome our live stream audience. Let's give them a hand, please. Let's welcome our live stream audience. We consistently have around 1,000 people that are checking us out, tracking us on live stream between Tuesday and Sunday services. So it's an amazing thing. We've been doing it for years. So please take the opportunity to share if you can. I'd love to welcome our first-time guests. This is an opportunity for anybody here that's in the sanctuary tonight to be recognized. We're not going to make you come up and talk or anything like that. We're just going to ask you, if you are here for the very first time tonight on a Tuesday night, I'm going to ask you to stand quick so we can welcome you. Anybody? Anybody here? Whoa, there's lots of people. Lots of new people. Thank you for coming out. We're grateful that you came out. We would love it if you chose to come back next week. And if you do, we'd love it even more if you bring somebody with you. So you guys are already family members to us just by showing up tonight. So let's give our first-time family members one more welcome. In the back on the in the foyer on the little table, there is a sign-up sheet for medallions. Every month, at the end of the month, we do medallion night. That would be if, for example, this month, if your anniversary of 1 year or more sobriety would fall during the month of December, you can sign up to receive a medallion, so make sure you hit that up if that's you. Also in the back, Ms. Shauna is still looking for some participants to do her research study. And you can tell by this little thing right here that some people have taken it, all right? So go back there. If you are looking at trying to figure out what that means, you can either see Shauna, she's right there in the front afterwards, or you can pick this up and contact her, and she needs participants, and it would be greatly appreciated if you looked into that. So please take a look at that as well. Monday night, we have an awesome big book meeting here in the church downstairs in Fellowship Hall. If you're looking for a big book meeting to try out, come join us at 7 p.m. on Monday nights downstairs. That meeting every week is run by Mike. And where's Mike? There's Mike right there. Give Mike a hand. Give Mike a hand. So Mondays at 7. We also have men's ministry every Monday night at 7 p.m. with Pastor Scott and his team. Let's give Pastor Scott a hand back there. Men's ministry is located in the multi-purpose room Monday nights at 7 o'clock as well. So there's stuff happening here every day of the week. Tuesday night, you know where to come. You're here. Wednesday night, we've got an awesome Bible study right here in the sanctuary. So come check us out. Wednesday night at 6:30. I've got to slow down a little bit. Wednesday is the Bible study, 6:30 right here in the sanctuary. Stuff happens all the time. Saturday morning, we have cleanup, right, Eric Brew? What time's cleanup? 8 a.m. here in the sanctuary, actually downstairs in Fellowship Hall. We need more people to help clean and maintain the building inside and out. So if you want to do that, just show up on Saturday at 8 o'clock and help us with that. Then the day after Saturday is Sunday. Can everybody say Sunday? Sunday. Church. 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 On Sunday. On Sunday. Let's give the Lord a hand for church on Sunday. We can do better than that. Come on. Wake up. We just had an amazing anniversary service, which was off the charts. And if you appreciated that in any way, shape, or form, let's give God a hand for that right now. We have 3 services on Sunday. We have 10 a.m., we have 12:30 over north. Everybody say over north. And then we come back here at 6 p.m. on Sunday night. So please check us out on Sunday at one of those services. A couple of additional announcements. This year, Christmas and New Year's falls on a Wednesday, which means Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve falls on a Tuesday. So we will be having a Christmas Eve church service like we do every year. This year, it will be at 5:30 p.m. It'll be from 5:30 to 6:30 Christmas Eve here in the sanctuary. And we will be having a recovery meeting at 6:45, just like every single Tuesday on Christmas Eve as well. We'd love to have you join us for that. We'll announce that again next week to remind you. And again, on New Year's Eve, which is not a party night for us, it's a night to be in a meeting. So we will be having our Tuesday night recovery meeting January 31st at the normal time. So we hope to see you then. Okay, yes, let's give a hand. All right. That's all I got. I'm ready for Pastor Jeff to come on out because he's got a powerful teaching. He's got a lot of stuff happening, and we're ready to see it. So if Pastor Jeff is ready, we are ready for him. And here he comes. Let's give him a big hand.
All right, let's get the vibe up. That's all you got? And I can see if you were part of planning that anniversary service, we were here day and night, but everybody's a little lethargic here this evening. If God woke you up, you're above ground, you're out of prison, and you can pass a UA, let's give God a hand. And even if you can't pass a UA, you are loved. You're still in the right place. I embraced a good friend of mine from years ago who here tonight, and she just told me she's struggling. And I told her I just appreciate your honesty. Because life is full of struggles. If it isn't this, it's that. It's not about how many times you fall, it's about how many times you get back up. I know for a fact I got another relapse in me. I just don't know if I got another recovery in me. This last time was not easy to get back. And I had to transition. I mean, I'm still kind of like that, and we all are in a little bit of way, but I don't want to just be known as the comeback kid. See, I used to know how to get sober, but I never knew how to stay sober. Staying sober is difficult. So, and if you're having a hard time with it, there's no shame in that. You're here. That's what's important. You're here. And maybe tonight, you'll hear something that can give you hope. See, I used to sell a lot of dope. Now I distribute a lot of hope. And the hope is free. A person without hope is like a person without oxygen. If you're not dead, God's not done. And we got to do our friends that unfortunately died in their addiction justice, and we need to get sober, and we need to stay sober because we want to live the lives that they were trying to live and be the people that they were trying to be. And we were at Gateway Detox last night, and there was 3 of us, including Sol and myself, and in that hour that we were together, we shared hope. And we always tell those incredible people that are in detox that if you feel better after this hour, this 1 hour of your life in a circle of recovery, what would your life look like day after day after day after day, if you give it your best, you're going to find you're better. You're going to get me here in a minute, Donnie? Or am I just having an anxiety attack? Sometimes I'll hear a little squeaking in my ears, and it ain't nothing but my ears. But I commend all of you for being here tonight. Again, if recovery was easy, I wouldn't have to go through 11 treatments. But it was never about those 11 treatments. It was about me not willing to work a program. At the end of the day, it works if you work it. And it's a lot of hard work, but it's the hard work you will not regret. I've also put a lot of work into jobs, and they ended up nowhere. But I still learned character while I was putting in the work. And you hear me say this 1,000 times, talent without character is wasted. And if you're anything like I used to be, your talent will take you places your character can't sustain you. So when your talent takes you places your character can't sustain you, that's called pressure. And if you're anything like I used to be, which you are, because it's the we, that when we're under pressure, and I'm going to talk about that tonight, we'll look at things outside of ourselves to relieve the pressure, but it doesn't really relieve the pressure. It amplifies it. It excels it. Come on, man. So I'm grateful for you. If you dared to come out to church on Sunday night as we celebrated 10 years, and, by the grace of God and His mercy and a lot of hard work, we hit 12 years. 12 years. Thank you. Thank you for correcting me. I didn't take that correction as rejection, because I'm wrong often. And the only thing that's being wrong with being wrong is if you think you're right. Let me teach you about arguing with people. I choose not to argue with people. There's a lot of people that are argumentative. And a person that's argumentative is often arguing with themselves. And if you just choose to agree to disagree, that person's either going to go find somebody else to argue with, or they're going to argue with themselves, but eventually they're going to get tired. Energy is too precious to waste. Like I said when I walked out here, I like vibe and aura. My man's got vibe and aura. I like energy, I like vibe, and I like aura, and that's why we've been talking about this. And as we pass the baskets, the Queen's going to sing a song, and the title of the song is, I Trust in God. Now, trusting in God is not easy. The thing is that we blame God for what people have done to us. And everybody in recovery, a lot of people in general, have trust issues. I had to get to the root of that trust issue. The root of my trust issues is I don't trust me. Am I really going to work a program this time? I can talk the talk, but can I walk the walk? See, my sponsor, who's now in heaven, years ago at Cavalier Club, a men's meeting, used to say, you're 12 inches away from getting it. You got all the head knowledge in the world. And I used to be so arrogant, I would say it. I don't need to go to treatment. I can run a treatment center with a crack pipe in my mouth. Where I end is where recovery begins. And we got to come all the way in. We got to get real. We got to get genuine. And game recognizes game. Heart recognizes heart. Authenticity recognizes authenticity. Transparency. See, you just got to be you. Because the hardest person for you to be in the world is somebody other than yourself. But I had to change one thing, that was everything. In order for me to start to learn, I had to first unlearn some things. I needed a reboot. I needed to start over. As I said earlier, I was the comeback kid. I know how to get back what I lost with my eyes closed after a relapse. I just didn't know how to keep it. I was tired of being a rebuilder. These queens came up to me tonight and they said they want a sponsor. And I was listening to them and they have a lot of wisdom because they just don't want any sponsor. Because this is life and death. And at the end of the day, if you don't think it is, there's a strong possibility you might not make it. We're not sitting in this room, and I don't want to speak that, but we got to be real about it. Like I tell you guys all the time, I mean, I wasn't the type of drug addict that went to the dope house and said, put a little cut on top of that crack. I didn't go to Stand Up Frank's back in the day and say, put a little more Bacardi on top of that rum. So why would you want your recovery cut? Why would you want your recovery watered down? We never wanted our drinks watered down. So just come real with it. I tell the guys all the time when I'm privileged enough to be with them, if I was, I just recently went in for a physical and they're taking blood work often now because I want to be the best version of myself. But why would I go in to get blood work done at the doctor's office and for whatever reason, what if they found something? But let's say the doctor didn't want to come in and tell me what he found because he knew I'd get offended. So he was afraid to come in the examination room after they drew blood, and I paid all this good money for them to see if I was okay or not, but he wouldn't come tell me what he found because I'd take my ball and go home. And that's kind of what we do with our sponsors and our counselors and our therapists. Just shoot straight with me. I'm paying you, or the government's paying you, and chances are I paid for the government to pay you because I have worked. I can never understand when people when they used to sell a lot of drugs, they get a real job and then they're mad about taxes. Like we say, FICA, who's this FICA? I got to go meet him, he's taking all my money. So living life on life's terms is not easy, so I do trust in God. I know too much about him to doubt him. I don't just know of him, I actually know him. And the song sings, perfect submission. In order for you to be committed, you first have to be submitted. And no one likes the word submission. Last night at Detox, we were talking about the suggestions of recovery. Now, if you're rebellious, which is all of us, we don't like suggestions, right? And I call BS. I call bad story. Because you know what? Vodka suggested that I drink it, and I didn't argue with it. Methamphetamine suggested that I shoot it, and I didn't argue it. Crack suggested that let me just change my narrative. It didn't suggest it, it commanded it. And I said, yes, sir. Go rob that person. Yes, sir. Go empty out your bank accounts, or don't pick up your kids. I didn't like not doing that, but that's what I did. But just because you and I made some mistakes doesn't mean we are a mistake. Just because you and I have failed doesn't mean we're failures. You cannot be trusted unless you're first tested. And here's the thing, a lot of us are back here to take the test again, but there might not be a retake in the future. So since you're here, I was busting my buddy's chops yesterday. We were around some sirens and people were gathering around, and the sirens weren't police sirens. And I said, if these were police sirens, you would not be gathering around. And he laughed. Think about what you guys have been through. It's not always about what did happen. You also got to reflect on what could have happened. And whatever did happen will never unhappen, but there's a lot more that could have happened. Just by a couple inches of that bullet passing my head, I couldn't be here. Just by a couple heartbeats when my heart went flatline because of an overdose. If that heart wouldn't have beat again, I wouldn't be here. That violence. We've seen some things. We've been exposed to some things. We've done some things. And tonight I'm going to hit that right in the bullseye. So it says, I submit to God, and that's scary. It says, I know the author of tomorrow. See, I can't say this because we're in church, but a lot of us have 1 foot in yesterday, 1 foot in tomorrow, and we're urinating on today. He is the author of tomorrow. If you get to a level of spirituality, you'll believe your past is forgiven, your present has meaning, and your future is secure. He says he will never fail. He didn't fail you then, he won't fail you now. People will fail you. You'll fail me, I'll fail you, but God will not fail you. He's the great I am, not the great I was or I'm going to be. He's never late. If he was early and I still had dope on me, I wouldn't have came. If he was late, I wouldn't be here. He's always on time. He's not going to fail. You know, I sought the Lord and he heard and he answered. That's why I trust him. That's why I trust him. If he didn't answer, you wouldn't be here. And he'll help you even though you don't believe in him. You know I'm not a holy roller. I'm not so heavenly minded I'm no earthly good. They teach you in the 12-step rooms that religion is for people that are afraid of hell. Spirituality is for people that have been there. I've been to hell on earth. You are loved. You are cared for. You are precious. I could never understand us. The best way to get back at them, whoever they are, was to punish us. Maybe if you give them a break, you'll give yourself a break. You will never get back at them by punishing you. It's time to elevate. Say elevate. Elevate. Say elevate. Elevate.
Blessed assurance, Jesus is mine. He's been my fourth man in the fire, time after time. Born of his spirit, washed in his blood. And what he did for me on Calvary is more than enough. So I trust in God, my Savior, the one who will never fail. He will never fail. Yes, I trust you, God. Oh, I'll trust you, God. I'll trust you, God. So I trust in God, my Savior, the one who will never, ever fail. He'll never, ever fail. Oh, I'll trust you, God. You're my Savior and the one who has never, ever failed. He's never, ever failed. So I'll trust you, God.
Trusting God is not easy. And maybe you need to get with somebody that knows God and tell them why you don't trust God. Maybe start with that. I was thinking about this stage up here, and a good friend of mine, who's been a friend of mine for many, many years, had a vision to this last week to black it all out and black all that out. And I was reminded years ago when we sat on this stage after our Tuesday night life recovery meeting with a bunch of gentlemen. We do that now back there, but it was guys that were new in the houses and guys that were seasoned, had been around for a while. And Jason, come up here for a second. He's mad at me. But I'll never forget, and my CFO, our CFO, John Lundberg, said, man, Jason was, whatever your lingo is with guitar people, ripping it or something on Sunday night. And I remember Jason sitting on that stage, and he got really authentic and real, as he always is. And he said, I used to play on a worship team in a church, and I don't ever feel like I can do it again. And I said, why? He goes, because I would shoot heroin in the church stall, bathroom stall, before I went out. And God would never want me to play in his house again. You know what the first thing I said to him? You're hired. Because that's not how God thinks. But he took it upon himself this last week, and he was here several nights during the week until 2 in the morning, and I think he did a pretty good job. Let's give him a hand. Love you, brother. And one of the visionaries, if not the visionary for this new stage design, is back there, and he's been with the church. How old were you when you started coming here? 15. Let's give Ethan a hand. Jonah also, he's always doing stuff as well. He's in Colombia right now. I'm grateful I'm not in Colombia right now. But my good old friend of 20 years is here tonight. And we used to sit in room 309. And over the last 20 years, he was inspired to write several devotionals that are sold around the world. But the main purpose of this devotional is it was on Mike's heart to give thousands away to inmates every year in the Midwest. And he came into my office today and he says, I got 2 boxes. And he told me a funny story, because we hear it all the time. But he said the latest story, and I don't know if this is good or bad, but it's just life, right? Someone that was incarcerated wanted one of these books, and these books were no longer available. We got a new shipment coming to him, but he really wanted one. So he traded 2 ramen noodles and some cigarettes. I don't think you're supposed to have cigarettes for the book. I said, well, however they get the book, at least he's got stand-up, Mike. You've been a faithful friend for 20 years. I love you with everything I got. He says I smell good. He says, I don't know, he was in treatment and I walked into his room and then I got there and he says, well, I'm not going to be able to relate to you. You're a crackhead. I had teeth falling out of my head and I said, well, tell me a little about yourself. He goes, I'm an alcoholic from Glenwood, Minnesota. And he said, I tried to kill myself because every time I looked out the window, all I saw was darkness. But his suicide attempt didn't work. But then he told me a story when his father-in-law at the time was in hospice and he was on morphine and he dropped one of his morphine pills and Mike put something on a pen to find it. And I said, well, we can relate. I love you. I thank you for your friendship. I thank you for your loyalty for 20 years.
Yeah.
You're a real friend.
Yeah, thank you.
So we have got 64 devotionals that if you were to go to Barnes & Noble are $10. We want to give them to you, to 64 people. If you want one of these devotionals, come up and get it. Merry Christmas. Let's give God a hand for Mike. I didn't get into the gym today, so I'm probably the one that's tired. Soul bogged me down with a bunch of drama and chaos. So Lord, I thank you for another day above ground and out of prison. I thank you for breath in my lungs, ordering my steps. I ask that you think through my mind and speak through my vocal cords as we retrace our steps tonight. In your name we pray, amen. Let's give God a hand. I was asking Shauna about the Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve services that fall on a Tuesday, and I just so appreciate her heart because she said that that is some of the most delicate times of the year for people in recovery. And you said it's a mandate that we do those meetings on that day. Because she knows the pain of addiction. Her father suffers every day from it. To the point last night where we were really concerned. And sometimes when you're dealing with somebody in active addiction, you feel helpless. And all you can do is tell them you love them. And the only thing you can really do is pray. He's very, very lucky to have a daughter like you that has never judged him because he's still stuck, that has always loved him when he doesn't know how to love himself. That's the we of the program. So over the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about revive. Say revive. Revive. See, I see a lot of people, even with multiple years in recovery, becoming complacent in their recovery. Like Stace teaches us, don't let the gifts of the program take you away from the program. So oftentimes in your journey, you have to be revived to consciousness. You have to get intentional again, and we've been doing that. But it cannot be an afterthought. It has to be a priority. So does your relationship with God. And we talked about week one, we said, come out. Say, come out. Come out. Week 2, we the things that needed to come out of us, things we have done, or other things people have done to us. So we had to ask for forgiveness, and we maybe you're not there yet. That's okay, but just keep taking small steps towards it. And we had to grant forgiveness. Say forgiveness. Week 3, we talked about storm systems. Say storm systems. And I always tell you guys, why is the devil so concerned about you getting free? You must be of value. So we talked about storm systems, that the devil never throws a big storm at small people. You will know the significance of the person by the size of their storm. And then in that same week, we talked about our human souls. And then last week, we talked about territory. Say territory. We talked about the human spirit, and we talked about the grace of God. And this week, we're going to talk about identity. Say identity. Sometimes you will lose yourself because you're consumed by your issues. Your issues will become your identity. I was telling my man right over there that had a recent struggle, I said, "You're okay, bro. You're okay." But oftentimes we're known by our issues. In the first 5 chapters of Mark, we never even knew the name of the people that Jesus restored because they were known by their issues. And tonight is no different. In Mark 5, Jesus demonstrates his authority. The Bible says when Jesus crossed over to the other side, a large crowd gathered around him on the lake. And one of the synagogue leaders by the name of Jairus came, and when he saw Jesus, he fell on his feet, because it's easy to give God everything when you got nothing. This synagogue leader, who was Jewish, fell to the feet of Jesus, and he pleaded earnestly with him, "My little daughter is dying." I want you to think about for a moment how you and I's loved ones pleaded with Jesus because we were out there dying. I know Grandma, what's up, man? Good to see you. Give me a hug. Love you, brother.
You too, man. Miss you.
Miss you too. But at the end of the day, his daughter was dying. I think about I told these champions last night at Detox, the last 18, 17 now years of my mom's life, I was able to give her life back because she didn't have to go to bed every night not sleeping, wondering if she was going to get the call. The call from the coroner. The call from the police officer. And to be able to give her her life back was precious to me. And Jairus says he pleaded with him, "Come over and put your hands so my daughter will be healed and live." So basically, Jesus now was the last resort, because if a synagogue leader is the one that manages the business and spiritual affairs of the synagogue. And if you're a synagogue leader, you're not gonna go to Jesus as the Messiah. That was forbidden. But sometimes Jesus is your last resort. I don't want to do Jesus like that anymore in my life. I don't want to use God as a Baal's bondsman. Just call on him when I'm in trouble. And Jairus now comes to Jesus, but the interesting thing about Jairus, he does not introduce himself to Jesus with his title. He introduces himself to Jesus with his issue. He didn't play the title, because sometimes in life it doesn't matter how big your title is, your issue is bigger than your title. Even though you got a big title, doesn't mean you're not going to have big real issues in life. So he did not lead with his title, even though he could have, because sometimes life will throw life at you and your title is insignificant. Life can be tough. But oftentimes people are identified by their issues, but they're not just identified by their issues. Oftentimes in life we're identified by our issues or our achievements. And we lose who we are, and that's our identity. Your identity is not in your doing. You hear me say this all the time. That's great when you're doing good, if your identity is in your doing. But that's not so great if you're not doing good. And trust me, in your recovery, you're also not going to do good in life sometimes. Yeah. If you make a mistake, just learn from it. They say insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. But the interesting thing about Jairus was he came to Jesus, and he was basically telling Jesus, I'm not saying this is right or wrong, this is the way you have to heal my daughter. You have to come with me, and you have to lay hands on her. And it's important to understand that just because Jesus never changes, he might use a different method than he used with me than he'll use with you. And because you see him doing something different with you than he did with me, you think he's not doing anything. So Jairus had a limited understanding on how Jesus was to approach his dying daughter. And I see a lot of people like, well, it must not be working because the way it worked for them is not what's happening with me. It doesn't mean God's not working. So don't lose heart. And it says, while this was happening, say while. A large crowd followed and pressed around him. Now just imagine this man coming up to Jesus, giving a request. Jesus grants the request and says, I'll come with you. While he's walking, there's everyone around Jesus, and this is what happened next. A large crowd followed him and pressed around him, and a woman with the issue of blood, again, what's the woman's name? We don't know. We just know she's bleeding. Who was subject to bleeding for 12 years. Say 12. She was in a desperate condition and was deemed ceremonially unclean, so she couldn't be part of society. You know how they do us, right? Us drug addicts and alcoholics, they just throw us to the wolves. This woman felt that, but here is another woman without a name identified by her issue. She was divorced, she was ostracized from society, and she was forbidden to worship in the synagogue. See, a lot of drug addicts and alcoholics like me say, I'm too bad to go to church. That is untrue. Church is for broken people. And everybody who attends church either has experienced brokenness or is broken right now. You don't wait to go to God until you get it together by going to God to get it together. But this woman wasn't supposed to approach Jesus. Now we have two people that are approaching Jesus as a last resort. And society said you can't even approach Jesus because you're unclean, because you're bleeding. But the challenge is you couldn't see where this woman was bleeding. It's one thing if you come up to Tony, if I walk up to you and I see you got a bloody nose, I can hand you a tissue. But you couldn't see where this person is bleeding. See, internal bleeding, and we all suffer from it, comes from either something you've done or something you've gone through. And when a person has internal bleeding, which I do often, you will go to another person to try to describe what you're feeling. And even if that person is totally equipped to help you, you will sometimes leave that conversation. That didn't help. Even though you love the person and you confide in the person, but you don't feel any. See, there's so many things in my walk in recovery when I am in anguish. And I walk up to a trusted friend and it's not their fault. And I try to express to them what I'm feeling and what I'm going, and they're trying to help me, but it doesn't alleviate anything. This internal bleeding that we all have is painful. It's emotional. It's at times undescribable. And this internal bleeding, and another thing about this internal bleeding, you walk around with it and it's like you want somebody to notice, but they don't notice. They don't notice that you're hurting. They don't notice that you're bleeding in the inside. And even if they do notice, you can't describe what it is you're feeling. And we have this internal bleeding, and I believe that's why we use drugs and alcohol. Because we're trying to describe what we're feeling, but it's almost undescribable. And even if you try to talk to somebody about it, you still feel all alone. Because this internal bleeding is real. You know, when you go to a certain level of life, people got to say a lot of things about a lot of things, but you can't say nothing. Taking the high road is not easy. And this woman understood that. It goes on to say that she suffered a great deal under the care. I know I'm getting you because it's real quiet up in here. Because you know what it's like to bleed internally. You know what it's like to be misunderstood. You know what it's like to be in so much pain you don't know how to convey the pain you're in. I'm not talking about physical pain here. I'm talking about emotional pain. I'm talking about it is so painful that I don't know how to tell you what it is I'm feeling. And trust me, it's just not an addiction. I have felt it in 20 years of ministry, and I felt it today. She suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors, and she spent all she had, yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. You pick up where you left off and worse. We go to treatment. Treatment is very important to go to. But when we have a sick soul, we go to Dr. Internet. We go to Dr. Pleasure. We go to all these different places. Dr. Fear. Dr. Misunderstood. Even Dr. Success. As long as I'm successful, it'll stop this emotional bleeding. And that happens for just a short period of time because wherever you go, there you are. And this woman was diagnosed by all these doctors, but yet instead of growing better, she grew worse. You can't go to the wrong person to troubleshoot your soul. You got to go to Dr. Jesus. See, the thing about Dr. Jesus is he has a perfect diagnosis. The thing about Dr. Jesus, you don't have to wait in the waiting room. The thing of Dr. Jesus is you don't even have to pay the doctor's fees. He has already paid the doctor's fees. But we'll chase this rabbit trail. We'll trace that rabbit trail. We'll go to this philosophy and that philosophy and this theology and this person and that person. And wherever we go, we're not getting better, we're getting worse. Until we come to Dr. Jesus. See, a lot of us will go to Dr. Social Media for inspiration. Other of us will go to Dr. News. You watch CNN or Fox. Are you really getting information? Do you feel better after you got the information? If I watch somebody like him on social media, I get inspiration. But the majority of stuff on it does not give me inspiration. Usually I'm seeking it out of desperation. And then I go to a place where I don't get filled, I actually get empty. Oh, let me prove it to you. Let me take a hit of crack. This will make me feel better, but it actually makes me feel worse because I'm seeking something other than. So this what does a guy like me do with internal bleeding? Here's how I meditate my internal bleeding. You mean when I'm bleeding internally in my addiction, I seek external medication. So here I am in the mornings. I'm bleeding internally. I'm bleeding internally. Where's the vein? I'm bleeding internally. Because I'm bleeding internally. And I don't know what to do. But what do you do when you bleed internally in your recovery? Where do you go for relief? Because when you bleed internally in your addiction or in your recovery, you might seek relief in places that don't give you relief. You could try to seek relief in a sin. And this woman spent everything she had. Sometimes when it gets real bad, the only thing, who's got an iPhone on them? I am not a technical guy, but if this thing's got a problem, and I say to Pastor, can you fix it? And he says, I don't know how to fix it. Sometimes when you don't know how to fix it, you got to take it to the manufacturer. You got to go to the Apple store. See, at the Apple store, you'll have to wait in line. And that's why you don't want to go. But at the end of the day, you don't have to wait in no line for Jesus. You have 24/7 access. And you might not get the answer that you want, but she spent everything she had and she didn't get better. Where do you and I run to when we're bleeding? Where are you bleeding? How much time and energy and money did we spend on something that was promising to make us better and it made us worse? What is a place or person that we ran to make us better? For me, back in my addiction, it was crack. I need some heroin. I need some meth. They didn't have fentanyl around there then. But this is going to make me feel better. It didn't make me feel better. Give me a little shot of vodka. That'll make me feel better. It didn't make me feel better. Maybe for a couple seconds, but then there was a chase. So this woman, she went to so many people. And the Bible says now, when she heard about Jesus, she came up behind the crowd and touched his cloak because she thought if she was just to touch his clothes, I would be healed. You can't just hear about recovery. You cannot just hear that you can get sober. You have to hear about recovery, and you have to hear that you can get sober, but hearing is not enough. Because when you hear something, you have to think about what you heard. And when you think about what you heard, you got to decide what you're going to do. I have to imagine in 12 years of internal bleeding, this lady must have had a lot of thoughts. And the majority of those thoughts weren't positive thoughts, because she couldn't convey what it felt like to bleed for 12 years and be ostracized from society. You know what it's like to be ostracized from your family because of your addiction? You know what it's like not for anybody to be around you? First she had to hear it, then she had to think, but she had to act on that one thought out of the thousands of thoughts she might have been thinking that day. Should I approach him? Will this work if I touch him? I heard he can work miracles, but does that mean me too? She had to hear it, she had to think it, and then she had to touch his cloak. She heard that Jesus can do it, but she had to change her thought to a touch. I was in a meeting recently, and it made me think about my previous life, and this person said, I thought this is what you thought.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Yeah.
I thought this is what you thought. So I didn't do it.
Yeah.
How do you know what somebody else thought unless you ask them what they thought?
Yeah.
And how long have we sat in analysis paralysis because we thought what they thought? I thought this is what you thought about it. Well, ask them.
Yeah.
But think about all the thoughts in our heads. Let me ask you a question. Whatever you hear, how does that make you think? And then what does that do for this woman? She had 1,000. But I want you to think about your human interactions and do a little thought tracing here for a second. Think about your human interactions and think about that person that you interact with, and every time you interact with them, it's negative. I'm not done with this series yet, because the last Tuesday of the year, I'm teaching Revive called The Final Cut. There's certain things you can't take into next year. And I'm going to get to that in a minute. But when the woman had the courage, immediately her bleeding stopped. She felt it in her body. But what's interesting, she didn't just feel it in her body. Jesus felt something leaving his body. Never before have you seen Jesus say, I just felt that. He gives sight to the blind man. He gives the paralytic man his legs back. He allows people to do things that they've never done. But never before in the Bible did you say Jesus said, I felt that.
Yeah.
So what was so different about this healing? Because if he would have just merely stopped the bleeding, he wouldn't probably have felt that, because he has stopped things in people's lives previous to this. What is so different about this healing? What is so different that he said, I felt power leaving my body? Why would that much power have to leave his body? What was really going on with this woman? It was more than just the 12 years of internal bleeding. He felt it, she felt it, Jesus said he felt the power leave. This was a different situation that was happening. What's interesting to me is Jesus, Jim, says, who touched me? Now, I thought our Jesus knows everything. I thought he sees everything. So how did he not know who touched him? Or maybe he did know. What he did is, the woman, when she said, who touched me, Jesus is all-knowing.
Yeah.
Does he really not know who touched him? And then I thought about it. When you're bleeding internally, young lady, you feel unseen.
Yeah.
You feel unheard. It's like nobody understands what you're feeling, and even if you were to dare to convey what you're feeling, you can't get it out right, and even if you did get it out right, whatever they said back to you didn't help anything.
Right.
And you almost leave worse than you came. She spent all the money she had. Instead of growing better, she became worse. So then I thought about it. Okay, Jesus, I know you know everything. I know, I've never heard you say this in your word before, that you didn't know who touched you. So I don't know the biblical actual answer here. But my mind began to think, and I began to pray. When he asked her that, basically what he was saying to her is, I need you to tell me, and I need you to tell people that you touched me and your bleeding stopped. But why did that power come out of him? All those years of her feeling unseen, all those years of what it must have felt like to have this internal bleeding and not have anybody understand it or even try to help you or even misunderstand you. See, a lot of us, when we have this internal bleeding, like I said earlier, we go to the wrong medication. But this time around, Jesus needed to do something different. Because this woman was known by her internal bleeding. And then Jesus says, daughter. Daughter speaks to identity. This is the only time in the Bible that Jesus called, we're all sons and daughters, but this is the only time he had called her, a person, by daughter. And when I began to think about that, that was so profound, because now her identity was no longer in her issue. Her identity was within the King of Kings. Her identity was so powerful that she knew she was healed, but he had to make sure that he stopped the emotional bleeding of what it felt like to bleed for 12 years. It's one thing for the bleeding to stop, but it's like, it still feels like I'm still bleeding. He had to deal with the shame of sitting down. He had to deal with the feeling. See, she heard about Jesus. When she heard about Jesus and touched Jesus, her bleeding stopped. There's a big difference from hearing about Jesus to get what you need. There's a big difference from hearing from Jesus. When she heard from Jesus, Jesus called her a daughter and she got her identity back. Do you have so many issues that you've lost who you are? Do you even know who you are anymore? She got her identity back, but it's not so much what he told her. It's more so what he called her. I want you to think about your life for a second. What has caused that internal bleeding in your life that makes you and I buy stuff that's killing us? It's not so much what they told us, it's more so what they called us. What was so horrific that they called you that causes you and I to bleed at this level? It's never about just what they told you. It's about what they called you. And here's the thing, if you don't deal with this internal bleeding, all you're going to do is bleed over everybody you meet. Everywhere you go, there you are, and you're bleeding internally. You don't know how anybody can fix you. But every relationship you start, you will bleed into that relationship, and eventually you'll bleed out. That's what we were talking about last night. See, I don't want to bleed over new opportunities. I don't want to bleed over new relationships. I don't want to bleed over new territories. But this time around, see, I don't want to be that guy that I used to be, taking one step forward and I'm bleeding, but then I take 3 steps back and I never really get anywhere, because wherever I go, there I am, and I sabotage everything. Because I'm bleeding inside. And this woman got her identity back. Say identity. Now, I just went deep into the text. Maybe you forgot about Jairus. Now, put yourself in Jairus's. This is a big man with a big title, with a real issue, a dying daughter. And Jesus stopped to help somebody that didn't have a title. I want you to think about that for a second. While Jesus was still speaking, someone walked up to Jairus and says, "Hey, you're too late, brother. Your daughter's dead." They said, "Why bother the teacher anymore?" Overhearing this, Jesus said, "Don't be afraid, just believe." I want you to think about how many times have you had internally bleeding because you think somebody forgot about you. Let me tell you something. I referred to 3 of my mentors that were in the room. You don't want a mentor that's got 2 hours a day to talk to you on the phone. That mentor ain't got much going on. You weren't forgotten about. I mean, sometimes, people are busy. But now the daughter is dead. It's one thing to have faith in Jesus when your daughter's still alive. It's another thing to have faith in God. But what if the delayed timing? What if the timing's off? What if there's a delay in the timing? And what's interesting about Jairus is he still had faith. He could have been upset that he wasn't Jesus' first priority that day, the woman with the issue of blood was. But yet he still had the faith. So what does Jesus do? He says, take me to the girl. But he told the majority, 9 out of the 12 disciples to stay with the woman with the issue of blood. You cater to her. I'm taking my top 3 generals with me. Because not everybody can go with you in times like this. He takes 3 of his top generals with him, and when he gets to Jairus' house, all he hears, Tony, is a bunch of crying and commotion. Rightfully so. She died. Everybody's crying. There's a bunch of commotion. A 12-year-old daughter is dead. What does Jesus do? He clears out the house. Why did he clear out the house?
Faith would be amplified because he didn't want those dollars to know.
That is one reason. But I believe he cleared out the house for this reason too. That the house was full of commotion. The house probably lacked belief because the 12-year-old daughter was dead. And Jesus could only take 3 of the 12 with him because he had to take his top 3 that had the faith that moved mountains because they were about ready to approach something that was physically dead that needed to be alive. I believe that he had to clear out the house because there are moments in your life that you can't be around people that don't believe that it's going to happen. Get out of the house. I need believers in this house. I need people to believe in me. I don't need a doubter. I don't need a hater. I don't need a second guesser. Get out of no hard feelings, but you can't come in. If you're in this house, you got to have the same belief system as me. I mean, it's like you. I mean, if you're a CEO in your company, which some of you are, you're not going to sit in a boardroom with a bunch of negative Nellies and disbelieving Derricks. Get out. I need authentic faith. When you say it's impossible, I say with God, all things are possible. And if you don't believe that, I love you. God bless you. I'll pray for you, but you can't be in this room. We're about ready to have some radical faith. Somebody's dead. And Jesus is about ready. He said he's going to bring back. If Jesus says she's only sleeping, I believe. I don't need you sitting there like, sleeping? She looks dead to me. I don't know that she's coming back. Get out! Get out of here. I just need authentic believers that are crazy enough that my Jesus can raise people from the dead. That's who I need around me. I need people around me that believe I can do it no matter what because I trust in God. You cannot afford to be around people that are wondering if you're going to stay sober. People are wondering if you're going to smoke meth again. People are wondering if you're going to grab I can't fault you because that's all I did, but I really can't be around you. I got to be around people that build me up, not tear me down. Because truth is, I'm already ripping myself to shreds. That's why I always build you up. I don't need to know what you are or aren't doing. All I need to know is I love you. All I need to know is I believe in you. I don't know if you came out of the crack house soaking wet. I don't care. I just know you're a made man. You're a champion. You're a warrior. And God's got a plan for your life. And you and I have an understanding. You are worth it. You're not damaged goods. You ain't going to hell in a handbag. You're going to heaven in a basket. Say get out! Say get out! Somebody said to me a couple months ago, well, you're just going to let it die and it'll just fade out. What? Jesus promised, on this church, on this rock, I will build my church, and the gates of hell cannot prevail. What did you say? You just gonna let it dissolve? That ain't part of my vocabulary. When I said change the brand, you said, heck no, do not do that. That's legacy. At the end of the day, with Jesus on the boat, it'll never sink. Let's give God a hand. Sing it out. Do it politely. If you seen that Homer Simpson gif by the bushes, he just backs up in there. They won't even notice you're gone. Say, get out. And then Jesus brings the little girl back to life. The cool thing about this text, and Jesus is so awesome. I love your faith, young man. I saw you worshiping up here. Jesus didn't fail either of them. 12 years of sunshine of a 12-year-old daughter of a synagogue leader was about ready to be distinguished. 12 years of agony from a bleeding woman seemed hopeless. Jairus was a prominent man that had an issue. The woman was an outcast that nobody let in. Jairus was wealthy, and the woman was poor, and she spent all she had on doctors. The interesting thing about this text is this to me. Jairus came publicly, and the woman came secretly. And then Jesus healed and gave identity to the woman who came secretly, publicly. Yes. And he healed Jairus' daughter secretly. It blows my mind. It blows my mind. See, it doesn't matter how you come, just come. It doesn't matter if you're bleeding. It doesn't matter if you're coming out of the dope house. It doesn't matter if you're coming wherever. Just come. Say come. You just got to come. This woman had a new identity. And then Jesus gave strict orders not to tell anybody. We remember when we read, I think it was Mark 1, where Jesus told the leper, don't tell anybody, but then he told everybody. And they kicked Jesus out of the city, so Jesus took the leper's place. How many times has Jesus taken our place? In John 1:12, it says, to all who have received him, to all who have believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. That's sons and daughters. 12 years of bleeding, he stopped, and he raised to life a 12-year-old girl. Let me tell you something, you champions, because you're a champion. I tell the guys this all the time. You're a game changer. In the negative, we change the game for our family, so let's change the game for the positive. Identity is not what you call yourselves or other people call you. Identity with Jesus is never about what you did or what you've been through. Identity is not about what you're called, like I said, or what you're, so when you really look at it, this woman's genetics needed to meet Jesus. It changed her identity. And when I think about this woman, it was deep shame. I believe that's where she was really bleeding. It was a feeling of what it felt like to bleed. And sometimes you get emotional when you're internally bleeding. So I want you to change your narrative. Don't say, I am depressed. Say, I feel depressed, but I am not depression. I feel angry, but I'm not angry. I am not anger. You got to change the narrative of your identity. And then I thought about it. I am not a theologian. I am versed as much as I am within the biblical teachings, and I study the Bible often. But not many times you see, Jesus is gangster. Disciples? You ever heard that name on the streets? The only time that came to my memory, and I'm sure there's more times, is when Jesus was doing two things at once, is when he was on the cross. In this text, he's walking with Jairus, and on the way, he healed the woman. When he was on the cross, he had two criminals to his right and to his left, speaking with both of them. And then I thought about myself, I said, Lord, this like you're telling us in this example about what you're ready to do. Bleeding, what did he do on the cross? He bled. Where did he go after he was crucified? The tomb. Where was Jairus' daughter? The tomb, dead. What happened with Jairus' daughter? She was rose again. Resurrection. Blood, tomb, resurrection. So maybe you and I had to bleed all those years to be resurrected. And when you're bleeding internally, it feels like you're in a tomb. But you know what that tomb represents to me? Your shame. Because if I have to put myself in Jesus' shoes, the last place he's going to be is in a tomb. Why didn't he just skip the tomb and just get resurrected? I believe one of the reasons, and this isn't, I'm not saying I read this, but on my spirit, is he had to go there because that's where a lot of us live. A lot of us live in these tombs. And over the last 55 years of my life, I know what the tomb feels like. As long as I can remember, as a little boy, I've been bleeding internally. I never felt like I fit in. I never felt when I looked myself in the mirror at 55 years of age. Sometimes I don't know who's looking back. I don't know what's happening. Have I lost myself in my issues? Have I lost myself at the degree where I just don't know? I remember when I was a little boy, and I remember what it would feel like as a little boy. And I remember this picture of me. And as long as I can remember from 0 to 5, I had insecurities, I had fears, and I had trauma. And then from 6 to 10, I still had fears and traumas and insecurity, and I started building resentments. I didn't like the way I looked. I really didn't like my teeth, and people make fun of me. But at this age now, I began to play hockey, and I was going to prove to you that you need to love me because I'm going to perform. And then the ages 11 to 15, I was the captain of the team. Everybody loved my performance. But then I began to compare myself with other people. I got frustrated. I had low self-worth. I learned how to be dishonest, and I became jealous of everybody's around me. Just please notice me. I'm bleeding, I'm bleeding, I'm bleeding. And then into my high school years, I couldn't smile. And now addiction was running in I went to my first treatment. I was still frustrated. I was still inadequate. I was feeling the pressure. I was irritable. And my parents were spending all the money they had on things to get me better, but yet I grew worse. I was hopeless. I was still dishonest. And then my addiction took a road. And all these things that made me bleed internally. All of these things were just compiling and compiling and compiling. And now I'm in my 20s. And I got all these feelings in me, and now I'm turning 26, and I'm getting close to being in my 30s, but yet I'm still shooting dope, I'm still smoking meth, I'm still doing crack, I'm still drinking. And I'm trying to stop the internal bleeding, and now it's humiliating. I'm experiencing self-hatred and hatred from other people. I'm walking in ignorance. I got character defects. I'm operating in my self-will. I now have been through multiple treatments. I'm a disappointment. I'm depressed. I'm angry. I'm uncertain. I'm in another treatment center, and I feel left behind. And then I turned 30. And here I am. I'm in jail. I'm inadequate. I'm in agony. I'm full of shame, regret. On top of everything else I've been feeling as long as I can remember as a 2-year-old boy. And then I went to my 11th treatment. And I began to work the steps of the program. When I turned 36 is when Serenity Village was started. And all these things are still here, but now I'm starting to form connection. I'm growing in spirituality. I've learned how to surrender. I'm walking in faith. I have hope, and I'm working the 12 steps. I have a sponsor, and I have service. And then I go into my 40s. And I'm learning how to have empathy and resilience. I'm learning integrity and courage and honesty. I'm a grateful person because I'm still connected. I'm still surrendered. I'm walking in spirituality. None of this doing perfectly. And once in a while, these things pop up. And then I go into my mid-40s. And I'm still teaching the message. And I'm still doing it. But all this stuff I've ever felt in my life is still here. But these things are overlapping them. I love myself. I love God. I love people. And as I'm now in this time of my life, in my late 40s, turning 50 now, all these things I've learned in this room are overcoming these things I've always felt. And now I'm in my 50s. And I don't feel as insecure. I know what to do with my fear. I know what to do with my trauma. I activated what I learned in treatment. I no longer hate myself, and I can't control if other people hate me. But my life has been totally transformed by working the 12 steps, having faith, working with a sponsor mentor, and being of service. All of these things in red overcame everything in white. They're still there. I still get insecure, but I know what to do with it. I still get afraid. I still deal with hatred. But I know how to do it. So when I look myself in the mirror now, I understand who's looking back. Because these rooms have taught me on what to do. And when I look myself in the mirror, I see these things, practicing these principles in all my affairs. And through it all, I have kept my eyes upon Jesus. Through it all, I have fixed my eyes upon Jesus, the author and perfecter of my faith. Because of the joy set before me, he endured the cross and scorned its shame. And it keeps getting brighter and brighter and brighter and brighter. You overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of your testimony. I haven't stopped testifying for 20 years. I don't know if this camera's working back here or not, but I want you to be able to look yourself in the mirror? Who is looking back? Have you lost yourself because of the internal bleeding? Have you lost yourself? I lost myself. This young lady, I loved it. She came in here tonight on a mission. She says, I know where I need to sit. I need the right angle. Have you lost yourself because of your bleeding? You see, I know who's looking back now. I know when a character defect is come into my life. I know when fear has risen to a level higher than it needs to be. I know when I've lacked confidence. I know when I'm insecure. Do you? Awareness is victory. All of those things that came on that screen up to 35 years of age are still in me. But they don't overcome me. Because I overcame by the blood of the Lamb and the word of my testimony. Through it all, for 20 consecutive years, far from perfect and made a lot of mistakes. But through it all, I have never stopped testifying about my Jesus on a Tuesday. They laugh, they leave, they don't like, they hate, they love. Through it all, I haven't stopped testifying about Jesus. My prayer for all of us is we know what to do now with our internal bleeding. Oh, hold on a second. Is it internal bleeding or is it eternal bleeding? Maybe it's eternal bleeding, but I know what to do with it. I love you. I pray for you. I'm nobody, but I want to tell you one thing about me. I'll always cheer you on. God bless you.